The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, cheers to the weirdest night of the NBA season. Last night. Yes, that's right. I'm not talking about Wednesday. I'm talking about Tuesday night. It was farewell tour evening. It was Magic retirement ceremony. I mean, what is going on in the NBA right now? This is madness. It had it all, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday night had it all. And we will cover all of that and then some. This is Wednesday. It's the last regular season Fantasy NBA Today episode of the 2018-2019 campaign. I am Dan Besbris, just moments away from welcoming in the... I didn't take time to come up with a new M word. I used them all up yesterday. I went with magnanimous on yesterday's podcast. That's a $6 word, baby. That's $5+. I've used marvelous, magical, mystical, mythical, magnanimous. He's a mensch. We're going Yiddish on today's show. The mensch. Michael Apotria will be coming up here momentarily. And he's going to be most of the show. This is going to be a two-man breakdown because going into last night's games, Mike and I chat regularly throughout the day. We work on a bunch of projects together over here at Hoop Ball. And he basically said to me, I am upset because our last DFS contest of the year is not on the last Tuesday, and instead it's on the last Wednesday. And he explained to me very explicitly, this is why. You have Dwayne Wade's last home game. You have Dirk's last game. You have all these storylines. You have teams that are actually battling for playoff seeding. And then even more hell broke loose. And I'd love to get his opinion on all of that stuff. So what I'm going to do is we're going to forego the typical, quick riff through the box score. And first and foremost, I want to welcome everybody to the podcast. Fantasy NBA Today. Hello, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. That's my Uncle Leo start to the podcast. Hello. At Hoopball Fantasy, at Hoopball Tweets. Hope you guys were following those Twitter accounts yesterday, because when I was chasing my kid around, the great Magic Johnson held an impromptu press conference to say that he was stepping down as president of the LA Lakers and disappearing into the wilderness to go help run the Dodgers. Craziness. Didn't tell his boss, didn't tell his sidekick, or whatever you want to call Rob Pelinka. Don't know if he actually told LeBron James. By all accounts, it sounds like he didn't. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that he told a couple of people behind the scenes. I can't imagine that a man with Magic's business acumen, forget the ability to scout NBA players, because he's been knocked around left and right for foolish signings, and he wasn't a good coach. He's not a great evaluator of talent, at least that hasn't already been established as talent. Fine. Forget those warts. Forget his successes, too, as one of the greatest players of all time. The one thing that we do know about Magic at this point in his life is that he's a hell of a businessman. He helped buy the Dodgers, and he's become something of the face of that organization, even though I think he owns only like 4 or 5% of the team. That's a big deal. Down there in the front row at most games, that generates revenue. He owns the movie theaters. He's got all these things. He's a mogul. So he knows how to make money and run business. He has to know the important parties that would go into this thing. And unless he wants the entire Lakers organization to burn, which I can't believe he really would, after the way that he was brought in as sort of golden boy savior by Jeannie Buss, I can't imagine he wants to just burn the thing to the ground. I'm betting that at some point we find out. I don't think we got all the news yet, is what I'm saying. I think at some point we find out, yes, Magic whispered something to Rich Paul during a meeting with he and LeBron James. I don't know. Maybe he didn't tell Jeannie Buss, and it doesn't sound like he told Rob Pelinka. I don't know if they were getting along. I'm betting LeBron knew. I'm betting LeBron might be the only person who knew that this was coming. Meanwhile, the young Lakers are just playing hard every night, which is kind of cool, unrelated to the weird Magic Johnson circumstances. But they're playing hard. We're seeing playoff seeding take shape, which is also very cool because as soon as we know where everybody's going, then we can get betting lines to talk about. That's a fun thing to do. And we've got the last day of the regular season here coming up, where you have to, if you're not in a keeper format, drop every single player who's not playing tonight. Anybody who doesn't have a game, you dump them right at this second. Stop the podcast, go find people on the waiver wire that might play tonight and have an interesting impact, and go make this swap right now, or hopefully you did so yesterday if your league is for a day in advance. There's no point in hanging on to anybody else. Pick up anybody you can because you got to make sure you max out games on the last day if you have the games to use. Obviously, if you're in a Roto League with a games cap and you've used them all up, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want at that point. But if you got to use up 7, 8, 9 games, 10 games, whatever it happens to be, you better get all guys that might play tonight. That's my only big advice for today. What I'd like to do with the rest of the podcast, and again, we'll welcome in Mike Apotria. We're going to talk about the DFS slate. We've got that DraftKings contest coming up tonight. Another 11-game docket coming up. I want to go through what happened yesterday with Apotria and find out what he thinks that means for this evening. If there are any storylines he pulled out of yesterday, what he thinks about what's going on in Lakerland, the weird surging Charlotte Hornets, who remain one game back of the Detroit Pistons. Do they have any kind of tiebreaker? I'm not sure that they can actually get in. I think, did the Pistons win all of those games? I forget. I don't have that number in front of me. I think they might still have to play the last one out. I'm not positive. Do they do tiebreaker? They do tiebreakers, right? They don't have an extra game. Everybody resting for Boston. Weird minutes in Washington. Half the team resting in Philly. The Dwayne Wade farewell tour. The Dirk farewell tour. Who's going to play for Toronto? Who's playing for Golden State? New Orleans, New York, Chicago. I mean, it's mad. Jamal freaking Crawford at 51. How much did I talk about him on the Monday podcast? And I said, you guys are going to laugh at me, but I'm saying Jamal Crawford is a big-time pickup right now. And then he pops out for 51. I count that one. I say a lot of stupid stuff over the course of a year, and that one felt a little stupid as I was saying it. And then, thank you, Jamal. 50 freaking 1 made me look smart for a day. Dirk had 30, D. Wade had 30, Donovan Mitchell had 50. What a night. No, he had 47? It was close. It was awfully close. Man alive. All right, so we're going to do the whole thing with a guest today because it's too much. You guys have heard me lecture to myself for so long this year. It's more fun when somebody else gets to do some of the talking. So, quick reminder here at the start that if you guys want to get involved on the waitlist on the blurbing side, we're taking folks over there. If you want to get involved over on the programming side, we're taking folks over there. Fun times here at the Hoob as we embark upon, starting in a couple of hours, off-season mode. That's project time. That's when we get to pull out all the stops, get the big projects going. Anyway, hit me up at Dan Besbris on Twitter. You can also hit up at Mike Apotria on Twitter. Our guest here coming up. Not a guest. He's really effectively a Wednesday co-host. But we'll bring him in mid-show because that's the way we've done it so far. You guys do it. Tweet at us with some more M words to describe our wonderful guest coming up here. The wonderful, the spectacular, my good buddy. I said it before, the mensch, Mike Apotria. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good morning, Dan.
Easy.
A wonderful morning. We got this nailed. I think we might even have to try to throw something else in there just to keep us on our toes.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start recording at a different time. Although, it's funny. I did it this morning. It's not actually the afternoon where you are yet. People don't know that.
No, we're actually doing it a little bit early.
Yeah.
This is like a first for us. Usually we tell each other, all right, we're gonna shoot for. It would be 12:30 Eastern time over here where I am, and yeah, we're fashionably late here and there, but we are on time and early today.
We are early today. That's right. My wife is off work, so she's got the kid for drop off at preschool today, which means I don't have to grab that little spider monkey and try to get him to uncling from my body and go play with his friends. And that means I can record a podcast a little bit sooner. So that's good. So what's up, Mike? You got your season wrapping up here. Before we even get into the DFS stuff, first of all, I have a few things to ask you. I want to know how your season went. I know you're I know about the home league. We talked about that last week, but I'm sure you got other stuff going on. And then yesterday, you and I were chatting, not on a podcast, and you were like, I've got all these unbelievable things I want to tell people about the Tuesday DFS card. I wish our contest was Tuesday this week. What? I mean, I assume that was because of all the motivational angles, which that's something that. Okay, I'm monologuing here, so I'm going to need you to jump in soon to just stop me from talking. But like, I know that there's a very large chunk of the DFS populace that goes exclusively on algorithms, and last night is a night where those would have missed some stuff, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of narratives, and two of my favorite ones I've been keeping my eye on for 2 weeks with, licking my lips, waiting for this day. I even got so excited on a Monday when I didn't even realize that there was no games. I was out of it over the weekend, and I clicked on it, and I see the card was already pulled up, just pumped, and I realized, wait, this is for tomorrow. They put it out a day early. So I had even more time now to sit there, break it down, understand who I liked. And, I was very high on Wade and Dirk. I had them in just about every lineup. I was high on Crawford, Bender, Jamario Jones, Andre Drummond, a few guys over there in Boston. It was a good night. I did have some Hazonia, but, we had the news pretty early where I exclusively only play on DraftKings at this point of the year because of the late swap. It's really, really getting an advantage over people. And you'll be sunk. There's going to be scratches left and right. So you want to make sure that you're on top of it. I mean, this is the last day we really have to worry about it before we start to see playoff rotations. But you're going to hear me go to that several times today, and it's going to be monitoring the news. That is the most important thing to factor in if you're playing at this point in the year.
Yeah, the blurb feeds are going crazy right now. And already, and we're recording early this morning, but already in the morning here, we have Dwayne Wade likely ruled in for tonight, Conley out, Richardson out, Vooch questionable, Draymond Green and Boogie out, Kevin Durant questionable, Klay Thompson questionable. And what did I pull that from? Like three of the 22 teams playing tonight? It's going to be, I try to give out roto advice a lot on this show, and my roto advice is like, look, you should have dropped everyone on your team that doesn't have a game today, because in all likelihood, half of the guys that do have a game today aren't going to play. So you need to have all 13 or 14 or 15 or 16 of your roster spots with someone who is actually eligible to play, because otherwise you're only going to get like 7 of your 10 slots to actually go. It's a crazy day, and I know that I have to imagine from a DFS standpoint, you got to have a whole bunch of lineups kind of ready to go in case of these things.
Yeah, well, it's the tough part is if you're somebody like me, like last night, I made about 15, 20 lineups. I maxed out the 20 entry max, and I did a few other ones. And when you have that many lineups and you do hand build like me, when you get the news of Hazonia sitting, you have to go back. I had about 20, 25 minutes to go through all my lineups and decide how I wanted to be able to adjust. And this wasn't news that we were anticipating. Generally, if I knew he was questionable, I would have had a backup plan already set. I probably would have had Hazonia playing in my forward position rather than my small forward position. That way, when I found out, or if I knew he was getting ruled out, I'd have a little bit more flexibility to work with. Luckily, I was able to make a quick and easy swap with just Kevin Knox being $200 cheaper, and he actually had a very good game. So that helped. But tonight, it's going to be really tough because we want the guys that we know are playing minutes, and we're not going to have all that news. So it's kind of using our best judgment and our basketball sense of minds right now and analyzing it. We have to look at the teams who we know they're still playing for something. There's a few out there, and vice versa with the teams who we know they have nothing to play for, and take advantage of those spots.
So before we even get into tonight's DFS stuff, how's everything else going? You got any roto leagues wrapping up tonight?
Oh no, literally all my leagues are done. Honestly,
roto.
I find it very no. I mean, I'm a roto guy, but we cut it off a little early. It's just this end of the year stuff. It ends up being just a mess for those teams who should have won. I guess it's just I'm not a big fan of doing any leagues at this point of the year unless it's DFS. The cream of the crop generally rises, and this is the time where I'd want to focus all that on the DFS action as well. This is my money-making point of the year. The last week of the season, I always mention it, last week, first week of All-Star break. That's where you could take advantage or you get taken advantage of.
So for your roto leagues, are those weekly? Is that why you try to eliminate this last chunk?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We do a lot of weekly leagues. And I'm in a few other leagues where just a few guys in the Twitter sphere and community, and maybe I'll look into doing another full year roto one. But I don't mention it often. I'm an avid fantasy guy in general. I'm very into MLB. I'm very into NFL as well. I got a few season-long teams getting ready for baseball, so it's a little bit easier for me to transition gears, I guess, from doing that week to week when I go to the baseball, and then I'm still focusing on my DFS. I got a lot of content in my brain daily for all sports. It's kind of rough.
Baseball is hard, man. I have a baseball fantasy team that's consistently in the bottom third in its league, repeated like every year. I don't know. I like just watching baseball now. I've sort of dialed it back, and it's no longer a job, so I don't even want to think about it like that. I just want to sit back, relax, and enjoy baseball as a baseball fan. Hot dogs and brews, and then just go from there. Also, inevitably, I'm going to mess up my lineup a bunch of times because you have to be so locked in with baseball guys. That's hard, man. I don't know how you guys do all that extra stuff. So,
what kind of game guy are you, Dan? I got to ask. Are you the guy that likes to watch, pitching duel where it's a 0-0 game heading into the ninth, or you want to see a slugfest while you're at the stadium?
I don't care either one, as long as there aren't a ton of walks and errors. That's what drives me crazy about baseball. And errors are just going to happen, but just please throw strikes. I don't want to see 8 pitch at bats that end in a walk. That to me, and there's no way to fix it because walking is a very efficient way to get people on base. You don't actually have to try to find a hole with your line drive or ground ball or whatever. So it's a great way for batters. I get it, but it's also a terribly boring part of the game. A base on balls is not fun. Watching somebody stand there and see pitches for 3 or 4 minutes and then just slowly trot to first. That's not an exciting part of baseball. I don't think anybody can argue the opposite on that. I get it. It's just not a base. Yeah, a base hit is more exciting than a walk. That's just
even if it's like the leadoff guy, the speedy guy. And now, not only did we have to watch 9 pitch at bat, now we're going to see him do 4 pickoff moves just to go to the plate anyway.
Speed slows the game down like crazy. I was pretty cool though. I saw the video of Billy Hamilton tagging up and scoring from second on a fly ball to deep center yesterday. That was making the rounds a little bit, and it reminded me of when Billy was in Bakersfield back in 2012 when I was calling the games there, and he tagged up and scored on a pop-up to second. So, seeing him tag to second base. He scored on a pop-up on the infield. Twice, he came home from third on a strikeout and a ball in the dirt. So, the catcher blocked it. Catcher picked it up to throw to first to get the out on the guy that struck out, and Billy scored from third on the throw to first and then the throw back home. So, the fact that people are finally seeing him at full speed all these years later is pretty neat. Anyway, not a baseball podcast, so we can do that another time. It's such a fun, I love the pastime. I love to chill with baseball in the summertime. You said you really liked yesterday's DFS card. How did it end up going for you? I think, based on all the guys that you were mentioning to me in our off-air chat, I have to assume it went pretty well.
Oh yeah, I did good. I don't toot my own. I try to be as transparent as possible. You'll hear me say when I get creamed. You'll hear me say when I do good. Back in the day, before I actually started contributing, and I was kind of new to the whole DFS realm, I used to take a few screenshots and post them. But when it's worth it, the big time, then it's worth the screenshot to me. So when you get one of those 40 or 50K wins, then you can take the picture. Otherwise, I try to just keep it going because I know. The good outweighs the bad some days. I absolutely crushed last night. I did great. But for every day that you crush, you're going to have a few where you just do very poorly. So try to be as transparent as possible and try to keep my methods to the madness the same every single night, regardless of how I do. So I'm going to take the same approach I did last night into tonight. And I think I'll do fairly well.
Tonight, how the hell do we even begin? I mean, really, how do you even begin to set your lineup? Because you got all the normal questions that you go through. Who's a value? Who's going to put up a big line? The totals for the games. And then you have to factor in sort of a dynamic aspect to your lineup when half of the guys you want to put in your lineup are out. Okay, so obviously at the time of this podcast, we know that a handful of guys are already ruled out. And there's a few guys that are possibilities to get ruled out. Do you go through and basically just try to eliminate those guys from your lineup before you even construct it, just so that you're not worried about all that stuff at the last second? Or is the potential upside so great with some of these dudes that might not end up playing that you do have to have them in an initial lineup and you just have kind of backups ready to go, sort of the preemptive strike, so to speak. Listen, I know this guy's a great value, but if he doesn't play, I've got this other guy. I know I can just make a quick flip. I don't even have to look it up at 3:45 p.m. out here. Is that how you do it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you always need to have a backup plan for everybody. I always tell you, I never 100% anybody in any lineups. It'll sink you. Last night Kemba was in a great spot, but if you 100% of Kemba in every single lineup, he only had 38 DraftKings points because he only played 27 minutes. The game got out of hand. So, if you avoided him like I did in any lineup, I avoided Kemba. I played Doncic. I got a triple-double out of him in those spots. So, getting off certain players, even though they're in great spots, is kind of a necessity if you're doing multiple lineups. If you're doing one, you just go with your gut and go with the guys you love. This is a time of the year where we don't necessarily need to worry about the ceiling of players as much or the ownership as much. There's going to be ownership spread across the board with all these injuries, with all the rest, with all the guys kind of stepping up. And the ceilings aren't taken into account as much because a lot of the guys that are priced up, a lot of the studs, yes, they might be playing, but how many minutes are they playing? Yeah, we might get Jokic to start, but Jokic plays 26 minutes at his price. He's still not worth it. You can even get a guy who's playing 35 minutes in a different spot who's dirt cheap who can outscore him at that scenario. So we're not necessarily worried about spending all of our cash and the upside of guys. We're gonna target the guys who we know they're still playing for something. We know that they're going to play 35 minutes or more, and they're going to take shots. It's the point of the year where it's minutes equal money right now. We want to. I'm not even going to risk it in certain spots with the value. You can just wait on the news and think the game locks at 8. I can leave this spot open to sneak this guy in there just in case he does end up starting. But you also can ruin your lineup when we have so many spots we can go to already. If you're doing multiple, you can flirt around like that. But I think it's just being safe today. Safe is going to win you money.
So does that mean that you're willing to just have a lineup with like $3,000 or $4,000 unused?
That's a little bit excessive. I did do a few shell lineups where I had about 900, 1,200 left over, and I'm perfectly okay with that. But you always want to sit there and look at your lineup, and if you have that money left over, see if you could adjust. It's not a bad thing to see. But what you're also going to do is if you leave that much on the table, you're going to differentiate. Not a lot of people are willing to leave money on the table sometimes. It just doesn't feel right to them. So then they immediately start jamming in other guys, and that's how similar lineups get made, and you end up falling onto a spot that you initially didn't even want to go to.
Okay, so let's start one then. I'll play the game with you over here. I'm scrolling through all the insane names on the DraftKings board. Where do you begin? Do you start at the bottom, basically, and scroll your way up looking for the cheap dudes, or do you have guys that you've isolated already and you can actually just go hunt and pluck them into your lineup?
I try to isolate right off the rip on days like this, especially knowing that there's 2 or 3 specific games I'm really interested in targeting, being the Hornets with Kemba. They're still playing for something. They're playing for their playoff lives right now. The Pistons need to win right now, too. So, I know I really like Drummond. So when you're talking about spending up on guys who – on any given night, Drummond and Jokic have a very similar ceiling. But, tonight I know Drummond's going to have to play big minutes. I know Blake's really hurt. I know it's a good matchup for them as well. So it immediately allows me just to kind of eliminate those guys. So if I'm spending up on center, it's probably going to be Drummond all day without a doubt. And, another team that we can look at is Portland. Portland's playing for the 3 seed today. They do not want to play the Jazz in the first round. So they're really going to try to win this. And if you're telling me Damian Lillard's going to be playing big minutes, you can go right there too. So it kind of eliminates those other guys that we would normally really, really take into consideration. Like I said, your Jokic I know Bradley Beal's not playing tonight, but guys like that who, we really have to think about. Maybe D'Angelo Russell, Trae Young, I don't really need to look at. I don't think Donovan Mitchell. I think the Jazz can end up resting people. So once you start plucking out those high priced guys who you just aren't comfortable with their minutes or we have better options, it kind of sorts itself out very easily. And then you plug in the value. So I would say start with your studs today. We're going to have value all across the board in different spots. Some of it's going to be better than others where it's going to seem like you must play them. And, start with that. And then the last 2 or 3 spots of your lineup, it should just fill out. And as long as you feel comfortable, like I said, about their minutes and their playing time, that is the most important thing on tonight's slate. You should be good. I'm feeling confident.
Okay, so let's plug in a couple of studs. Did you say Dame is one of them?
Yeah, we could plug in Dame. I like Dame. If I'm spending up on guards, there's 3 guards I really, really like. And if Doncic, we're gonna have to wait on news. If we hear he's starting, we can go right to Doncic against the Spurs team. That will probably rest some starters in their last game. And we saw him just triple-double last night against the Suns, and he still kind of wants to show why he's Rookie of the Year. So 32-minute Doncic at 9,600 has tremendous upside. Kemba Walker at 95 in a must-win game against Orlando. I like him. Lillard at 93. So I would say you can almost start with any 1 or 2 of those guys. It's going to be tough, getting 2 of those guys or 3 of those guys and Drummond in there, because then, we're talking about all of our salaries pretty much gone. But having 1 or 2 of those 9K or up guys is definitely feasible tonight.
Okay, so Dame is in. Let's say we're going to go. I'll throw Kemba in since let's say I'm not going to wait on Doncic to find out if he's actually playing or not. 31-2 I've got left. Are you spending 10K of that on Drummond at center?
I really like Drummond tonight. It's going to be he's playing this Knicks matchup. We're going to have some of that value open up later. We're hoping for a couple more of the 3K guys. We're going to get to a few of them. And this is where you end up tinkering, because one of the 3K guys I kind of like is Quinn Cook at 3,800. And, those guard spots get taken up awfully quickly. And, the Lillard, Walker, and Cook are all point guard eligible. So, we can still play one at utility. But this is where if I finagled a little bit, maybe I throw Quinn Cook and Lillard in there, and then instead of spending that money at guard, I spend it up at center with Drummond. And it would still give me the same remaining salary, and I'd still feel comfortable with my guard spot. Now, in the lineups where I'm playing Lillard and Kemba and I don't have Drummond, I'm going to want to look for another center option I feel comfortable in tonight. And right now I'm really looking at like Mitchell Robinson, Luke Cornett, those 2 guys. Bam with a decent matchup against Brooklyn. It's a little bit more worrisome in that spot. We don't know the minutes, and the Heat really aren't playing for anything anymore.
Right.
But it's a center. It's against the Nets, and Bam's clearly a part of their future. So they might just keep rolling him out there. So I would probably say let's take out Kemba, let's put in Quinn Cook, and let's go Lillard, Drummond, Cook.
Lillard, Drummond, Quinn Cook. All right, you said he's at 3,800?
Yep.
All right,
let's go give us some money to spend up in other spots.
All right, Quinn, let's go find you here. All right, you're jumped into the lineup here. 26-8 remaining over the last 5 spots to fill. So where do we go from here? How do we start to round this thing out?
Well, we're going to go with some of our, immediate value that I think we could already expect. We'll go over to our forward position. One of my favorite plays on the night is going to be Gorgie Dang if we hear Karl Anthony Towns is rolled out again, which I expect him to be rolled out. And Dang should get about 28 to 30 minutes and be able to produce pretty well with that. And I like Cornette. We can throw both those guys into both of our forward spots, see what that allows us. 4,100 for Dang is a great price. It's not the greatest matchup, but again, Denver's not going to be playing their full allotment of minutes. I surely don't expect it, at least. It would be a little foolish if they did. And Cornette's been just clubbing away. If he's going to keep getting these minutes, which I expect, especially against Detroit, who plays big, they're going to need him out there. He's played 39 and 36 minutes over the past 2 games and 38, 48 DraftKings points. Even if you get on the lower half of 34, 35 at 5,200, that's still a great value. And now we're left with about 5,800 for 3 positions, and we still know we have some value. Right before we signed on, everybody for the Sixers just got rolled out. They're playing Chicago. Everybody on the Sixers is rolled out. So now we got to look at guys like, TJ McConnell. I mean, Boban. We might even have a Boban alert coming on once in a while tonight.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we're going to have a little bit. And even if you go and throw McConnell in at your shooting guard spot now, well, I'm liking this lineup. I'm liking the way this looks. And you're telling me I got 7K to fill a forward and a utility spot, 14 total, 7K average for each. You can easily make that work. You can even go and throw a stud in there like, a Paul George, who OKC wants to win. Yes, they're playing Milwaukee and Giannis is going to rest. But if we hear that Bledsoe and Middleton are still playing, even if it's 25, 26 minutes, this game will still be competitive. And if we know George and Westbrook are going to play over 30 minutes, that's going to be very important. These raw points are going to make a big difference on tonight's slate. Just having a few guys get you 40 or 50, even if they don't crush their salary. George is 10-3. If he gets you 50, you'll take that tonight.
All right. Well, I guess that gets us to our sort of first lineup here. Do you have any other thoughts on potential backups? Let's say something on this list gets ruled out. Where do you look next?
So I mentioned a bunch of the guys that I do like for value. One of the spots I was really monitoring earlier was there's going to be these Sixers, and we kind of got some news. Another one that we're going to monitor would be the Jazz, because if all those guys get ruled out, we could start looking at players like, Grayson Allen, who would come off the, likely actually start, take a ton of shots. the other center? Tyler Lydon, I believe. I might be saying it wrong. Tony Bradley. What am I saying? Tony Bradley. If we hear that Gobert's out, anytime he steps in for there, he's basically a lock for a double-double. He's another guy you'd be able to look at later in the day. We still have to monitor a few other spots. McKinney is the guy I'm going to be looking at. I mentioned Quinn Cook earlier, but if we hear that right now, Durant and Clay are questionable. They sat yesterday, so they're more likely to play. And if they do play, again, raw points, I'm not expecting to play a full allotment, but with Curry, Draymond, and Cousins already ruled out, those guys are still going to take probably 15 to 20 shots and would be in play. But I'm really hoping they get ruled out. We just get some complete garbage time with Quinn Cook and McKinney going against Memphis. And, Memphis is going to be playing an up-pace spot. DeLon Wright, Tyler Dorsey, both very much in play for me. I'm probably going to avoid the front court with the mess it is right now and just stick with the guards. But I think we got some good value, some good pivot spots. I don't think we need to get too cute. I think the best part is going to be to identify the best value in your own mind throughout the course of the slate right now. So, like I said, these are the guys I will like McKinney if we know that Durant and Clay are out. But where does McKinney fall in comparison to Gorgie Dang? I still like Gorgie Dang more. Where would he fall in accordance to TJ McConnell? That would be a little bit closer, but I'd probably even lean a little bit more TJ McConnell, 3,400 against the Bulls. He really let me down in the last spot that he started, and he's generally a good point per minute producer while he's starting. So at the end of the day, I might not even need to go to those guys unless I'm just trying to make multiple lineups and get off of Quinn Cook.
Would you ever go back to the well with Dwayne Wade in his last game ever, or is it because it's on the road and he went so hard yesterday? The assumption here is that he probably doesn't play as many minutes.
See, this is the tough part. So it's really not the narrative for me tonight. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes out there and takes a bunch of shots with it being his last game, but we really know he put everything into his last home game. That's the one he was really excited for. He had one last dance on his shoes. He fell on the broadcaster's table, made himself get a nice shacked in a fool. That was pretty good, but I just don't think we need to go there. It's really one of those spots I'm trying to pivot off of, and I hope that other people get just as excited seeing what he did last night. He's 6,700. So I mentioned it yesterday. Him and Dirk had a great narrative going, but Wade, you're kind of paying for the narrative. He was 6,700, and you're paying for it again tonight. It's a great matchup against Brooklyn, but I'm not as confident in it, and I'd rather just kind of go to some other spots and hope that he just plays 24, 25 minutes with the Heat, completely eliminated from playoff contention.
Would you go anywhere else with anyone else, I should say, in Philadelphia, given that Redick, Embiid, Bolden, Simmons, Harris, I think all of it. Did I get them all? I think 5 guys are out. Is Jimmy Butler playing? The only one I didn't mention was Jimmy Butler. Is he out?
Wouldn't be surprised if I would be surprised if he does. Yeah, we definitely have. I mean, we can look at, like I said, TJ McConnell, Furkan Korkmaz is another guy who we saw earlier in the year when he was getting some good run. He wasn't afraid to shoot. He took some shots. They'll probably play Zaire Smith a good amount, but where his offensive game is right now, he's still pretty fresh in the NBA. He doesn't have a lot of miles on him just yet, so I think I'd probably steer away from there.
What about Jonathan Simmons? He's extremely cheap.
Jonathan Simmons is extremely cheap. He's not a guy I like to play too much, though. He's not a great point per minute producer. And yes, you could go there, and it wouldn't shock me. These guys are going to have to play minutes. They're all going to play. It's against Chicago, so I'm going to flat out say they're all in play. But which guys I tend to lean with the most would probably be the guys that have the best point per minute producers, like Boban, McConnell, Korkmaz, and the only thing you have to worry about with Boban, though, is Amir Johnson is still there. They'll probably divvy up the minutes. I'm not expecting a 30-minute night from Boban, but we've seen what this guy can do in 22, and he can do it.
Okay, I think I'm going to put a pin in that because now my brain is full. Looking ahead, Mike, this is not something that I warned you we'd talk about, but it occurs to me as we're in the middle of our conversation that you and I are probably not going to have another podcast for a little bit here. We'll do some shows in the offseason. Fear not, Mike is not done with the show, but there are going to be some playoff games that happen between now and the next time we talk, whenever that happens to be. How do you set DFS lineups for playoff basketball? Because I know at first, at least, you got enough games to kind of build out a normal-ish lineup, right? Because the first round, there's 8 different things happening, usually 4 of them happening on any given night. As the playoffs start to move along and you only have 1 or 2 games, and then you got your every other day DFS lineups, and then you have your 2-day DFS lineups, How do you build out your playoff stuff? What are some of the different strategies you employ there?
Great question. And playoffs is a completely different beast in its own. We see those rotations get shortened massively. Teams go to a 7 or 8 man rotation, where now these paying up for these studs is well worth it, because now there's a huge difference between getting a guy like Westbrook playing 34 minutes or Westbrook playing 38 or 39. That 4 or 5 minutes is huge. So we're going to be a lot less cute. You're going to go for the guys in the spots where we're expected to crush. One thing I like to do is I look at previous playoffs and see what coaching tendencies were like, seeing how short of rotations they rolled out. If they have a similar rotation, how they used it. And if these teams matched up in playoffs last year, how those rotations looked, we'll probably see that later in playoffs with the Eastern Conference. A lot of these teams played each other last year in the playoffs. So we'll have a good understanding with that. But it's really knowing your slate as well. Like you said, there's going to be some games or some days where there's 4 games on and 2 games on. And I always tell you guys, it's really dependent on your slate. And if you have a 4-game slate in playoffs, yeah, you're going to want to get a little bit of all these studs. We're going to have some big names on there, but you have to take a stance. And avoiding some of the chalk and these shorter slates is kind of how I try to tend to win money in playoffs. All these guys are all great basketball players. When you speak of point guards, just Curry, Lillard, Westbrook, these guys can all get 60 points on any given night without a doubt. So if you're telling me, I get Lillard for 4K cheaper, and 40% of the people are going to play Westbrook and 15% might play Lillard, well, that's just a spot I might take advantage in.
Are the prices different in the playoffs because the cards are so much shorter that it becomes really difficult to balance expensive and inexpensive guys, or does that not change at all?
Well, as the playoffs continue and get shorter and shorter, DraftKings actually lowers their minimum salary from $3K. I believe I'm not mistaken.
Ah, okay.
So you might see guys. I think the minimum salary would be like $1K or $1,500.
That makes sense.
And you'll see it adjust, but for the most part, the studs will stay up there. Your Currys, your Durants, your big names are going to still probably be around that $9 to $10K price range. You just see some of the guys that we might dumpster dive, normal rotation guys during the season who get 15 to 16 minutes. Well, now they might only get 5 to 6. So they kind of lower that. And, you can really take advantage of playoffs. Injuries do happen. We don't root for them. But sometimes they release the slates the night before. If a guy gets hurt, there's nothing they can do. And now you have a low price guy who might be 2K, and you got to jump on it.
I struggle anyway with the in-season stuff. That sounds difficult to me. Am I off base here?
I wouldn't say. I mean, it's going to be difficult in its own aspect. It's a little bit different type of play that you're going with in this, but it's really just like I said, knowing these rotations is how to capitalize. If you know that, they only go like the Warriors might only use let's say an 8 or 9 man rotation on a night. Well, avoiding any of those guys who are listed in that player pool that other people are going to click on, who are only going to get 5 or 6 minutes. Well, it seems small, but when you break it down for 4 or 5 teams, and there's a bunch of teams doing that, well, now you just eliminated half the player pool, and some of those guys are still going to get played. People do not adjust to playoff basketball as well as they should, and you're going to see guys, try to put in 4 studs, 3 studs, and then try to, go with a stars and scrubs and try to find a bunch of cheap guys to pair with it. Where I try to take more of the fair and balanced approach in playoffs. I want the guys where I know everybody in my lineup is going to play at least 26 to 30 minutes minimum.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll bug you about it, right? Because this is one to me that your way seems like one that makes more sense in my head, because the pricing, you almost sort of price yourself out on certain guys because there just aren't that many great like $2,500 or $3,000 values at a certain point. But here's the thing. Everybody follow at Mike Apotria on Twitter. You'll hear his thoughts on Twitter or on DFS throughout the playoffs. You've got stuff going on all the time. Okay, putting you on the spot here a little. Way too early to look at next year, but has anything happened here down the stretch that's kind of jumped out at you as something that, I don't know to call it like a hype guy, because those guys are a little bit easier to find, but maybe kind of a low-profile guy who made the move into ownable territory that you've sort of are hoping? This is a tough question, by the way, and if you don't have an answer, that's perfectly acceptable, because I've asked this super weird question. But the super weird question is there anybody floating around that you kind of hope stays under the radar that you saw something from late this year that you're half targeting for next season?
Actually, almost the complete opposite. Somebody who I saw, flash some glimpses of magnificence early in the year, and then fizzled out due to injury. And it's I'm gonna have my eye on Karis LeVert. He's a guy that we really saw him break out, and and the year ended as Russell's team, but it started as LeVert's. Both these guys look like a good tandem that we're going to see with the Nets for quite some time, and he might fly under the radar. You got to understand this guy was coming back off of a serious injury towards the end of the year, and the fact that he's already playing the amount of minutes he's still getting back into form, in my opinion. But he's going to be somebody I'm going to have my eye on, and not expect him to come in on a high DraftKings price on that opening night either. And targeting that, we're going to be looking for DFS purposes at the guys in new homes who are underpriced, getting new positions and new minute totals. We're going to be looking at rookies who we think can come out and be like Doncic or Ben Simmons and just fill the stat sheet. We want to jump on it before the price tag reflects that, though. I guarantee, Zion will probably be $8K right off the rip, but there'll be other guys that we can look at too. We're going to have a lot of it's awesome. I love the offseason. Offseason is one of my favorite times of the year, especially once we see that draft come around
and free agency. Some of these big names. So where does Kemba go? Where does KD go? I mean, Kemba to me is a really big storyline, because if he goes somewhere else, which I assume he will, because it's been a pretty not so fun treadmill for him in Charlotte for this X number of years, that opens up a lot in Charlotte. If they go into full rebuild mode, you got all these young guys that could do a whole bunch of stuff next year. Just in terms of the non-free agency guys, a couple of names that I thought were kind of interesting that played well down the stretch and had flashes of really good play, but I don't think made a ton of noise. Larry Nance Jr. jumps out to me as one of them. He had some really good stretches mixed in with injury and mixed in with sort of too much Tristan Thompson and too much Chetty Osman and Kevin Love coming back. But if Tristan Thompson is gone, that takes out one big roadblock. And another one that I thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know how this is going to shake out, is Jakob Poeltl, who's kind of slowly been playing his way into more of a role with San Antonio. He's not going to be a feature guy, but as a starting center that hovers between like 24 and 27 minutes, good field goal percent guy, good defensive stats. He's been sort of right on the cusp. It seems to me, Mike, like maybe late round centers are going to be pretty easy to find next year. I might be losing my mind on this. Maybe I'm just getting ahead of the game too much, but I'm thinking that we might be looking more at a point guard dearth in drafts. I know there was a long stretch there was like, you got to get your big men early because there aren't any anymore. And now it feels like there are a bunch of kind of mid to late round big men, and it's the guards that disappear quickly.
I absolutely agree. And speaking on some injuries and some young guys this year that might fly under the radar a little bit going into next year, can't forget about guys like Wendell Carter Jr., who was absolutely smashing. He's probably going to go a little later in drafts because the injury, and people forget about him towards the how good he was at the beginning of the year. Marvin Bagley just came on at the end of this year and just absolutely crushed. He really impressed me. I was, a fan of his game, not a huge fan. I thought he lacked a little bit defensively, but he can run the court. He can really handle a load on the offense. I expect the Kings to really pour it on for him next year. He really showed some good stuff going. And like you said, we're going to have other guys that are stepping up. We saw Christian Wood. Who knows what happens? Does he stay with New Orleans? Is he their starting center next year? Do they, Davis is leaving. We're going to have a lot of value at center position next year. And I really like targeting those big guys who can sneak you in a block and a half or a 3.5 towards the end of your draft.
Yeah, funny thing here on Poeltl, 9 category over the last month, he's number 90. Like, you'd never think that looking at it because he's averaging 6 points over that stretch, but about 7 rebounds, a steal, over a block and a half on 67% shooting from the field, and of course, almost no turnovers at all. So there's your slight advantage there. Yeah, efficient. These guys are out there. One of those guys that I thought kind of fit that role this year was Derek Favors, who didn't get a lot of love in drafts. He was more of like an old man squad kind of guy, and he looks like he's going to end the year as the number 79 ranked guy. That's very impressive. I mean, this is a dude that was getting drafted like around 130, never got any love all season long, but he's just quietly humming along with 0.7 steals, 1.4 blocks. I mean, that's over 2 defensive stats a game, averaging 12 and 7.5. He ended up having a really nice season.
He did, and he did it all, like you said, in limited minutes, and that's what some people get afraid of. They're afraid of, they look at the box score. He's only playing 24 minutes or 25. Who the hell cares when he's dropping numbers like he was doing in that amount of time? He was absolutely a fantastic point per minute producer all season. The only thing that ever holds him back is his hamstrings. He's got, I don't know, hammies made of glass or something.
And
like,
Rudy Gobert being in existence.
Oh, yeah. I guess the Stifle Tower at 7'2" right there can have something to do with it, too.
Yeah, stifling Derek Favors' upside. But still, that's a hell of a floor for a guy that's probably going to get drafted after 100 again next year.
Oh, yeah, because those concerns are still there for everybody. But you have to understand, it's baked into his price. If we knew Derek Favors was healthy and playing 35 minutes every night, this guy would be a top 40 pick. Unfortunately, it's always going to be baked in. So, take advantage of that and grab him late and be okay with him playing 25, 28, 30 on some nights. Might rest here and there, but that when he's healthy, he's a great point per minute producer. I got to ask you, though, where do we look at Mitchell Robinson next year?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I can't control myself with Mitchell Robinson. I'm going to do something I regret. This is like, late night at a bar, and I'm the last one there, and I'm going to make a bad decision.
He's a little foreshadow. He's definitely probably going to be a hoop ball guy next year.
Oh, my God.
You guys that. I expect us to be at least 10 to 15 spots over the field of most consensus rankings.
I'm petrified that we're going too far. That like at some point we're going to end up taking him at like 25, and that's too insane. But the numbers he's putting up here as a full-time starter are out of this world. I mean, he was a first-round value playing in the 20s in minutes. I don't know what to... someone's going to have to talk me down on that one. I'm going to do something that I fully regret with Mitchell Robinson. He's number 26 over the last month in 26 minutes a game. So he's
I think we're going to get a little bonus, or not a bonus. Our decision is going to be a little easier once the Knicks do something stupid. Bring in like 2 extra big men for no damn reason, and then we'll be like, okay, that's what we need. And now Mitchell Robinson will fall in the extra 4 rounds. We'll still overdraft him, and we'll get that great point per minute blocks and.
Oh man, I'm scared. I'm scared that something bad is going to happen on that front, because he's one of the very few young guys that I'm really caught up in the hype in. It doesn't happen to me very often, but Mitchell Robinson is one of them. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see if KD's a Nick. We'll see who they get in the draft. We'll see if Kyrie's a Nick. A lot of those things don't really change the Mitchell Robinson outlook. That might actually help us. When people are like, oh, well, he's never going to get any looks. His job has never been to get looks. It's to grab putback slams, and that would happen just fine with really good players around him. So that might even help. But if they bring in KD and or anyone else, let's say KD and Kyrie, that means that they're going to want to go into win now mode, and so the leash is going to get short. They're probably going to want to bring in a veteran at big man. It might be DeAndre Jordan comes back, or 1-year deal or something like that. I don't know. These are the types of things that could actually impact his outlook for next year. So tough to know with these teams that have a lot going on in free agency, like talking about the Hornets, who's actually back there. The Lakers, we don't know who's going to be there with LeBron next year. Is it going to be all the young guys? Is anyone else going to join the fray? So that type of stuff we sort of have to wait until July to really pick apart. But I'll use this as a segue to say the next few weeks of this podcast are largely going to be dedicated to, 1, gambling on the playoffs, and 2, breaking down how the teams went this year. Basically, this storyline for every team in the NBA. We'll just pour our way through it, and that'll obviously lead us to sort of reflection upon the season gone by. And Mike, next time you're on the pod, you ready to do a little season in review?
Ooh, yeah. I am more than ready. Born ready.
There you go.
Hawaiian Island Kona coffee running through the veins.
Yeah, we can't get Mike off of it. You got your special gift? Did it come in? No, not yet.
Special gift coming in.
Yeah, one of our listeners donated his second place winnings to you, Mike.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
You send me his Twitter handle immediately after this. This guy, I'm giving private advice to him tonight. Anything I can do to help him. You don't understand how bad I wanted that second place winning. All these contests, I can sit here and take down a Massfield GPP second place, and it'd probably be like 2,500. I just wanted some damn coffee. I want to win the coffee. It feels so much better winning stuff like that.
Well, we will make sure it was Theo was his name. I'll get his Twitter to you somehow. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but Theo's the first name. So you can thank Theo here on the broadcast, and I'll get you the Twitter off air.
I appreciate it, Theo. Thank you so much, brother. That's one of the nicest things, man. Thank you. Seriously.
Yeah, I was sad because I forgot to tell you last week, and then I talked about it on the next show and said, what an idiot. And then I thought, well, maybe I could bring it back up on this one. So Mike's got a present coming his way. Good luck to everybody tonight in the DFS contest. Mike, I will talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Dan. And thank you, Theo.
A big thank you to Theo, and a big thank you to Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company for supplying Mike with the energy he needs to get through his weeks. They are long ones, by the way. Mike works a lot of hours. I don't know if you guys know this. He actually tends bar at sort of like a rustic, old-school cigar bar on the weekends where he runs into former NBA players regularly. So he's got good stories. You should hit him up, at Mike Apotria on Twitter. Be his friend. He's giving... I'm not going to give out any names now because I'm sure the gentleman would prefer privacy, but Mike is currently giving out DFS advice to some of the biggest names in sports analysis. His DMs have gotten hot, people. The great Mike Apotria. Once again, thank you to Mike for popping on the show all season long. We'll talk to him in the offseason. We'll do some season review stuff. We'll talk some playoff DFS. He's, like he said, he follows all the sports. He's got everything going on. So no one handles my dumb questions better than Mike Apotria. Brew probably also in that top two for dealing with me on a weekly basis. That is, by the way, the end of our in-season portion of the proceedings. The final 2018-2019 Fantasy NBA Today episode is boxed up, wrapped with beautiful Easter and Passover-themed wrapping paper, and we put a lovely little bow atop it. Tomorrow, we start the offseason. It'll be a very short one tomorrow. That is just the catch your breath day after the season ends. Mostly we'll be doing some thanking of people. If you want to skip that one, I give you full permission to. Friday, we will embark upon our start of the offseason with lessons learned from a season gone by. We'll have probably a week or two of that. We'll get into the team breakdowns, and you can also hear from some of our new Fantasy NBA Today voices, not new podcast voices, but we're all coming together because the box score breakdown finished as of last night. And I've also got some wonderful voices from our evening premium show that I'd like to bring over here and introduce them to you as well. Next week, you'll be hearing more from all of those guys, including the great Ethan Noroff, myself, Adrian, Neil, Brandon. We got a 5-pack coming at you here on Fantasy NBA Today. Throughout the offseason, 5 shows a week. You guys know the drill. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening all season long. I don't want to make a big thing of it here at the end because the show continues. You know, it's not like I'm saying goodbye until the next season starts. I'm saying goodbye until tomorrow, but I do want to take this brief moment here at the end of the show to thank all the listeners. This year was our biggest. Every year we've had this podcast, it's grown. I think the first year, I mean, obviously it's easier to grow when there's nobody listening at the beginning, but you know, like 100% growth the first year and some 50% and then 40% growth. It's been very fast. It's been very rewarding. So thank you all. I love you guys, the listeners. You're the best. And let's start the offseason. What can I say? We'll kick it off tomorrow. Fantasy NBA Today returns 24 hours from right now. We'll start the offseason portion of the show. I am Dan Besbris. For everybody, all the guests, we've had all full in-season long. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will talk to you tomorrow. Congrats. My condolences, however your season went. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.